Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be diving into one of my most favorite trends of recent internet history, iceberg videos. I haven't seen an NFL Iceberg video out there yet. I've barely found an NFL Iceberg, picture at all. I've seen NHL ones, football as in soccer, and NBA ones, and other random sports ones, but I have yet to see an NFL Iceberg video, and I found a picture of one. I'm 90% good with it. I like how it's set up, but there's some really stupid ones when it gets to the bottom, so I kind of substituted some of those out for some of my own that I found really interesting. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to break down every single tier of this iceberg and just give you what the stories are behind it and go through each and every single topic we see on this picture. Before I get into it though, check out the rest of the things we have on here. You're going to be listening to some crazy stuff, so a little bit of a content warning. And just check out the rest of our channel, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for watching this video as far as you have right now, and stay tuned for the rest of the iceberg. Tier 1's theme is going to be a bunch of different scandals and rule breaking that we have seen over the past in the NFL. Starting out with the king of scandals and rule breaking, the New England Patriots. Our first topic is going to be Spygate. Spygate occurred when the Patriots started filming the Jets sideline to see their signals from their own sideline. Now, this has kind of been a common practice of other teams throughout the years. It's just the Jets kind of called the Patriots out on it. Eric Mangini didn't like Bill Belichick doing it to him. And for this infraction, the Patriots were fined $500,000. That was Belichick's fine. The team itself was fined $250,000 and lost their 2008 first-round pick. And then they got caught again later on in 2020. They got caught filming the Bengals sideline, and they were fined a 2021 third-round pick and $1.1 million as a punishment for the second infraction. Bountygate is a scandal that took place between 2009 and 2011 for the New Orleans Saints, where head coach Sean Payton and mostly defensive coordinator Greg Williams would put out payments if players injured other players in the opposing teams. When the league found out about this, they put out really swift and heavy fines. They suspended Greg Williams indefinitely, which was lifted a season later. They suspended Sean Payton for a year, and they lost that most upcoming first-round pick in that draft that was upcoming the year after they got caught, so 2011. Super Bowl fixes is a phenomenon where people believe that the NFL is rigging the Super Bowls to get the outcomes that they want, getting their favorite players or their most profitable players, their most marketable players, the win in the Super Bowl or getting players to the Super Bowl. The biggest case that people like to throw out there is Super Bowl 51, where the Atlanta Falcons lost to the New England Patriots after being up 28-3 into the third quarter. A lot of people think that the play calling by the Falcons and the penalties handed out by refs and just the decision-making overall by both the refs and the Falcons themselves as a team was kind of suspicious, and thought they allowed the Patriots to come back and make the biggest comeback of all time in a Super Bowl to get, their golden goose Tom Brady a victory. Sticking with the Tom Brady Patriots, Deflategate was a scandal from 2014 where in the AFC Championship game against the Colts, the Pats won 45-7, but following the game, Colts players started pointing out that the balls felt a little softer, and it was found that the balls that the Patriots using to throw with and play with on offense were a lower PSI than standard ball pressure should be. They originally handed out a 4-game suspension to Tom Brady, which he got appealed in a court, so he wasn't able to be suspended in 2015. But then the U.S. court came back on a second decision and enforced the 4-game suspension on the following season, the 2016 season. Tanking is a phenomenon in most sports leagues where one team will just deliberately lose to better their draft stock and get a better player in the draft. One of the biggest cases of this was the Indianapolis Colts back in 2010 with Peyton Manning as quarterback. They were a 10-6 team and were second in the AFC South. With the following season, they dropped to 2-14. Now Peyton Manning was out with a neck surgery, but their defense dropped to allowing the highest they allowed the highest defensive pass completion percentage to opposing teams in history. So teams were like, this is weird. Why are they all of a sudden super bad on defense when defense was fine last year? Peyton, was out for the year, but doesn't affect everything else on the team. It affects maybe the passing offense, but not other facets of the defense and things like that. And then after they did that, they got the first overall pick, got Andrew Luck, and proceeded to go back to an 11-5 season the next season after. Most people think this was maybe a deliberate plan to tank for the Colts. Players like Pat McAfee were on the team at the time, say it wasn't, but a lot of people are convinced that this is one of the biggest examples of tanking in the NFL. Also, one doctor said that there was a potentially 10-week recovery for Peyton Manning, which means he would have been back for the November games at the very latest, based on other players he treated with the same condition that Peyton had gone with surgery for. But Peyton was out for the entire season, did not play a single game that entire season, and people like to use this against them to think that they tanked just to get Andrew Luck so they can seamlessly transition from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. Refs betting is a phenomenon that hasn't really been confirmed by the NFL yet. NBA, Tim Donaghy was a big case where refs were found to be betting on games, and he was arrested and served time in prison. But people like to think that refs calling bad calls on their team and making bad plays overall consistently is an example of refs betting on the over-under and trying to hand teams wins or points to help them win in Vegas. And tying into the last one is DPI Inconsistency, or defensive pass interference inconsistency, where refs will call certain defensive pass interferences when they maybe wouldn't have been called early in the game if it was a close game, or if their team that most people like, the more popular team with a bigger fan base, is down and they need a jolt, they'll call defensive pass interference on weaker calls, whereas other times they'll have no calls on very clearly, obviously defensive pass interference. So there's very inconsistent criteria for their calling, and this also leads back into maybe perhaps the refs are betting or are rigging the games to help the NFL further storylines with the more popular teams. Moving on to Tier 2, now we have more of the darker kind of scandals, the dark side of football here, where there are more criminal activity and things like that that are being uncovered by players or other representatives of the league. First up, we have chronic traumatic CTE. CTE is the degradation of a brain caused by multiple hits to the head or head trauma, mostly in consideration with concussions, which is a very common injury in NFL with the full contact nature of the sport. The NFL has gone far as to try to silence research into CTE and concussions, which we'll get into a little bit later in the list, which was also shown in the movie Concussion from 2015. Next up is Ray Lewis. Now, this, I'm assuming, is referencing to Ray Lewis's murder charges that were given to him back in 2000. At a Super Bowl party in Atlanta, Ray Lewis had not attended the Super Bowl itself, was attending a party afterwards, where there was a skirmish that broke out, and two men were stabbed repeatedly, and both died, and blood had been found inside of Ray Lewis's limousine, and the driver had heard his two friends that he had come with the party with bragging about stabbing them. Now, Lewis and the two friends were all acquitted, even after having to serve a little bit of jail time, due to insufficient evidence. Further on down the road, Lewis reached out to the families of the two men murdered and gave them settlements out of court, which is always, not suspicious whatsoever. Not insinuating anything, allegedly. I don't want to get sued by Ray Lewis. This one's fun. Super Bowl 47 blackout. Now, there are a bunch of conspiracy theories surrounding the blackout that happened in Super Bowl 47 with the San Francisco 49ers versus the Baltimore Ravens, a.k.a. the Harbaugh Bowl. There are some crazy ones like a third secret Harbaugh brother cut the lines, or a secret San Francisco 49er fan tried to cut the power to try to flip the momentum as the Ravens were up 28-6 before the blackout happened, and it kind of just, shut the whole game down and stunted the Ravens' momentum. And Ray Lewis even thinks that, to this day, why would there be such a big company that has all this power and all this, high-tech equipment? How the hell did they just lose power during the biggest game of the year? Other conspiracy theories go to voodoo magic, because it was happening in New Orleans, which we'll get to some more later, as well as elaborate ads for TV shows that are coming out that involved societies with no electricity or after dark specials. Domestic violence is another one that's here, where it's an alarming amount of players have been caught domestically abusing their spouses or other women around them. Kareem Hunt, Ray Rice, and others recently have come out. The Seahawks offensive lineman, whose name is escaping me right now, just got recently. It's something that, for some reason, a lot of these NFL players get caught doing. Maybe it's the testosterone and macho aggressiveness needed to be an NFL player and be that kind of aggressive, hard-hitting player the entire time, or it has something else to do with the way that women are treated in the locker rooms and stuff like that. But as of right now, it's one of the biggest epidemics in the NFL world, with domestic abuse cases popping up almost every year. Hidden concussions is something I alluded to earlier. Calvin Johnson, the wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, said that he and many other players on every single team have hidden concussions from teams, and teams have just trying to bypass concussions because they need their star players to play. Many players are somehow avoiding the concussion protocol and trying to get back in games even though they're not medically cleared. And it's been an epidemic before the new research and after, as Calvin Johnson, who is now a player representative, has stated himself. Next up is Aaron Hernandez, who murdered Odin Lloyd on June 18th, 2013. He was found a mile behind Aaron Hernandez's house, and there was a bloodstain found in a rental vehicle tied back to Aaron Hernandez, and a blunt that had his DNA on it that was connected to the crime scene, which pinned Aaron Hernandez to be the murderer, and he was convicted, which later came out that he was homosexual, and he hung himself in prison a few years later. Michael Vick is talking about the November 25th, 2008 guilty plea that Michael Vick, the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, made after he was discovered to be financing a dogfighting ring called Bad News Kennel, where he, his cousin, and some other associates would be responsible for financing, taking part in, and executing dogs in a dogfighting ring. He served prison time for this and then returned to the NFL a year or two later to rejoin as the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback and then the Pittsburgh Steelers backup. Michael Vick now lobbies for programs against dog violence and has really worked hard to use his money and power to rehabilitate his image in the eyes of dog lover fans to really make up for this mistake he made when he was younger. Now on to Tier 3, which are going to be more of your out there conspiracy theories surrounding the NFL, things that many fans may believe or may not, and have never been confirmed nor denied by the NFL itself or outside sources. Entire League is Fixed is discussing the fact that refs may be paid off, or the NFL is trying to fix games and basically WWE script games to give them outcomes that they'd like to see. Maybe some underdog stories, or having their most profitable players win, especially when we talk about back in the first tier with Super Bowls being fixed. People are very upset with calls that don't go their way, and the same teams winning over and over again, and have led them to believe that that the league is fixed. The O.J. Simpson murder trial was the trial for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, who was O.J. Simpson's ex-wife and her friend, who the blood of Nicole Brown was found on a glove that had O.J.'s DNA on the inside of the glove. Famously, Kim Kardashian's father was the attorney for this and tried to make it a race issue and eventually got O.J. off the hook on the murder case. O.J. got into some trouble with the law later on, but was never found guilty for it, even though a lot of people believe he is guilty for it due to the mishandling of evidence by police at the scene. Russell Wilson interception to keep Beast Mode from winning the MVP. Now, in Super Bowl 49, Russell Wilson threw an interception on the 1-yard line despite Pete Carroll having Marshawn Lynch in his backfield, the best power back in football at the time. He could have handed it off and easily got a touchdown and won, except now they threw the pick and now they lost 28-24 forever in history. This theory is saying that Russ intentionally threw the interception because he knew if he scored that touchdown, no matter what that touchdown led to, and if they won the game, Beast Mode would be getting the Super Bowl MVP and not Russ, because Beast Mode had a pretty good game, 24 carries, 102 yards, and 1 touchdown. So the theory states that Russ didn't want to hand the ball off to Beast Mode and try to influence the pass play call, and then threw the interception on purpose so that they wouldn't win, and Beast Mode could win the MVP by himself anyway. Nate Sudfeld relates to backup quarterback Nate Sudfeld, who was an undrafted free agent in 2017, who spent time on the then called Washington Redskins roster for most of the preseason, and then was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles before Week 1, which Philadelphia was set to play the Washington Redskins. And Nate Sudfeld continuously, when he was doing scout team for Washington, kept calling them our plays and kept mistaking himself for still being on the Washington team. So many people thought that the Eagles brought in a division rival backup quarterback to get an advantage over them with playbooks and things like that, and tried to just sneak in and get an eye on everything the Washington Redskins were going to be doing against them. Jimmy Hoffa was an American Union labor leader and had ties to organized crime in such ways where when he went missing in 1975, a lot of people believed it was due to a mafia hit, but his body was never discovered, and a popular theory is that he was buried in New Jersey. And what happened to be in New Jersey was the old Giants and Jets Stadium in the Meadowlands, which many people believed his body is buried under the west end zone at the Meadowlands Arena. They have allegedly gone and checked there and haven't found anything, but no one has seen them go and dig it up, and it would be a big work process to do it. So a lot of people believe that is where his body is hidden to this day. This one was really interesting to research. Super Bowl sex trafficking. So the evidence for this is saying that in the months of January and February, sex trafficking reported crimes increase to their highest numbers every year in that time of the year, and that's around when the Super Bowl is starting to ramp up and be played. And they're connecting it to that the Super Bowl is played in a lot of cities where these spikes happen largely, like Miami and other places like that, Los Angeles, where in those January and February months, that's where the spikes are happening the most. The conspiracy theory goes and states that these people who are going to the Super Bowl or who are drunk and going to watch a football game from far away from their own homes are easy pickings for sex trafficking and other forced labor and slavery that is going on underground in the United States today. Going on to Tier 4 now, we have some even more crazy out there conspiracy theories that are not able to be proven whatsoever. Like the other ones before on the last tier were like maybe, potentially, if you really, really believe it and really squinted hard at it, there's like some believability to it. These ones are just out there and kind of fun to look at and spot the comparisons. Carson Wentz is Prince Harry is just showing how it's just referencing the impeccable likeness the two share to each other, and that maybe the Eagles quarterback is just the English prince moonlighting as a football player. Dolphins sabotaging the perfect season is in reference to, I believe, either the 1972 team sabotaging every other perfect season team to try to maintain their record, or the Dolphins organization itself trying to keep its 1972 team's legacy by sabotaging every other team's ability to become undefeated by somehow sabotaging them or beating them or some way, shape, or form. I couldn't find a lot on this. It was kind of just an idea they just placed on here. This one I found incredibly interesting. It's saying Adrian Peterson faked his ACL tear. So Adrian Peterson tore his ACL in Week 16 of 2011, which is usually a long, arduous process and is usually detrimental to especially running backs. It takes Saquon Barkley over a year to recover for it. Like, he tore his in like Week 2 as of filming this, and then he's still not back in preseason. They're hoping he's back by Week 1. However, after tearing it in Week 16, he tore it in Week 16, which is December 24th, 2011. He was back by Week 1 of the next season, which was in 2012, September. So less than a year, he somehow recovered from a torn ACL, and I believe it was also a torn or partially torn PCL or MCL as well. And then he proceeded to lead the league with 2,097 yards and then having also an additional 12 touchdowns. So he somehow recovered his ACL faster than anyone else has ever done at a position where ACLs are very important. It can be very detrimental to a person's playing. And then he had his best season of his career and had a record-breaking season, or almost record-breaking season. So it was very interesting to think that, like, he obviously didn't fake it, but, like, he could have, maybe. That's the whole point of this tier. It's like, maybe, potentially, if, like, some crazy stuff is actually happening, why not? Why not? Maybe he just didn't like the way his season was starting, or season was going. He just tore his ACL. Had a good comeback. Another thing leading to the scripted season thing is why would this would make a great comeback story and great healing story. So maybe that's something else. Connecting them together. That's the point of this darker tier. The Patriots 2001 Dynasty was a post 9/11 psyop. So if you didn't know what a psyop was before this, like me, a psyop is just like a non-warfare style of like brainwashing or tactical insertion of information to an enemy. This was more trying to justify the Patriots dynasty starting in 2001, the season directly following the 9/11 attacks. This is saying that the NFL started rigging games so that the New England Patriots, a team that has red, white, and blue as their colors and is literally called the Patriots, would try to stir up some patriotic symbolism and motivation for people after the 2001 9/11 attacks, and that's why the Patriots dynasty became a thing. So they're saying the NFL rigged it for the Patriots to win to make people feel better about 9/11 because they're specifically the most patriotic team in the NFL. Fun researching this. Yeah, I hope I don't find any government agents at my door tomorrow. David Tyree Magnet helmet just talks about David Tyree's helmet catch he made when the Giants beat the then 18-0 New England Patriots, snapping their closest thing to an undefeated season we're probably ever going to see. He caught a ball on his helmet, and when he hit the ground, it didn't move at all, so they're saying that maybe that his helmet was magnetic, and there was a metal plate inside the ball to try to, like, make sure he didn't drop the ball, so that, you know, ties back to NFL rigging games and, you know, etc., etc. And finally, for Tier 4, we have Joe Buck Has Narcolepsy, which is basically just saying that perhaps, in theory, Joe Buck has narcolepsy, which means he's constantly tired, and that's what gives credence to him having this very boring, drawling commentary where he's not really excited for anything. When he tries to be excited, it's very fake, and it's just very boring and slow and sleepy commentary. We're going to start Tier 5 out with the story that I inserted into this tier. This is the one I inserted into this entire iceberg. I thought it fit well with how deep down the iceberg goes and connects to previous things we mentioned in previous tiers with concussions and CTE, and I wanted to replace it because Packer is possessed by cheese is stupid. This is a story of Justin, hopefully I don't get his name wrong, Strzelczyk. We'll call him Justin Strzelczyk. I don't know how to say his name. That's my best chance. Buffalo native. Great. Thanks for the representative guy. When he died, which he did die, his brain was found to be severely depleted and suffering from a lot of CT trauma and other mental illness, brain damage things from constant concussions and hits to the head due to his football career. The way he died was after having starred in an Adam Sandler music video, because he went to the Super Bowl as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was cuffed in the NFL and got really into drugs and alcohol. Then he quit drugs and alcohol after running with the police. And then one morning when he was driving out of Pittsburgh, he had a fundraiser for something in Buffalo where he packed $2,600 and a bunch of crucifixes. He got into a hit-and-run accident where he sped away from the scene, which then a few minutes later, they spotted him and then chased him for 40 miles, in which he clocked up to 88 miles per hour in his truck, and he switched over to oncoming traffic lane to go against the flow to try to escape the police who were chasing him. I'm assuming because of his paranoia from his mental illness that happened with CTE, and he ran into a giant tanker truck which exploded, killing him and injuring the driver of the tanker truck. The toxicology report came back clean, which means it wasn't drugs or alcohol that was doing it, and his brain, this is where they scanned it and realized his brain was so depleted and riddled with the disease that they chalked it up to him just being mentally ill at the point in which this all happened. Saints voodoo sacrifices. I didn't find anything about blood sacrifices, which is what the list says, but I did find a cool story about how the Saints, before their 2000 playoff game against the St. Louis Rams, they had been losing home playoff games for 33 years straight. They invited a voodoo shaman priestess named Ava K. Jones to perform a negative energy dispelling ceremony to dispel all the negative energy from the past 33 years of losing home playoff games. So they literally brought a voodoo priestess to the midfield, performed a freaking voodoo ceremony, sacrifice, whatever. I don't know what they did there. And it worked. They beat the Rams 31-28 in their ensuing playoff game. So the Saints used voodoo to get good at football. This actually happened. ESPN wrote an article about it. This sport is stupid. Gronk is a 5-year-old robot. Basically, as much as I could discover is that Gronk is just a robot that is really good at football and has the programmed brain of a 5-year-old. That's why he likes going out partying and doing really stupid stuff, but is really amazing at football and can do all these acrobatic things, despite his back being messed up or him going out and getting partied and shit-faced the night before, and etc., etc. So he has a 5-year-old's mentality, but a robotic super football body. That's the best I can get out of that. Derek Carr's sorcery comes from a 35-31 loss to the Chiefs, where a picture of Derek Carr is looking very emo and looks like he's trying to cast a spell on everyone looking at the picture. It became an instant meme, and this is what this is referencing to. Aaron Hernandez is innocent is a conspiracy theory in which Aaron Hernandez's girlfriend claims he was innocent, and that people believe including the lawyer that defended Hernandez, who also defended Casey Anthony in her trial. Fun fact. People are saying that the rental car being in his name with the blood inside of it and a conspicuous non-smoked or half-smoked blunt with his DNA on it left in the vehicle with the blood with his name on it was all way too convenient of evidence that people think he was framed, and that they just wanted something to blame CTE on and to get back at a homosexual football player or whatever their motivation was being. Someone framed him, and because of how blatantly obvious the evidence was and how his girlfriend and his lawyer both say they believe he was innocent and that he wasn't capable of murdering someone, that this makes people think that he may or may not be innocent in his whole murder case. Now, Tier 6, I really couldn't do much research into. It's kind of just a bunch of random, the wackiest freaking conspiracy theories with the most smallest semblance of like maybe one fact of like something totally unrelated, but then connecting the dots kind of stuff. So I'm just going to try to do my best to explain these things. And I don't believe any of these, but it's just some wacky out there memey conspiracy theories about the NFL that I thought were kind of fun to try to explain to you guys. The Jets did 9/11 is a conspiracy theory in which I guess that people believe that the New York Jets as a franchise, or the owner who's friends with Putin or whatever, organized the terrorist attacks in 9/11 to draw attention to the New York football teams, who then played for 9/11 after that. That's the best I can think of. I don't know why the Giants wouldn't have been in on it either. Maybe it's because their name is Jets. There was an airliner that hit the towers. I'm not comfortable talking about it and trivializing 9/11 like this, but that's the best I can make out of this. Goodell created COVID to kill the XFL because the XFL was doing some cool stuff, even though the league wasn't that great to begin with, quality-wise. And they basically died because COVID made it impossible for the season to continue on. I wish he had just a machine to make COVID to make sure the XFL and its Sky Judge could not continue. But I mean, The Rock spoiled it anyway. So, Goodell, suck it. That's what you get for locking me in my house for 2 years. Modern Gladiators, NFL dates back to Roman Empire, is making the connection between NFL players going out there and hurting each other and maiming each other and injuring each other for our entertainment in coliseums, and saying that the original Roman Gladiators were actually just ancient NFL players and they were just playing football in the coliseum instead of fighting like lions and stuff. Tom Brady retains youth by kissing his child comes from a video of Tom Brady kissing his kids on the mouth and tying that into the fact that he seemingly has the fountain of youth and could play at a high level until his mid-40s. So I wish this was true. I wish he was just sucking the youth out of his children through their mouths with their kisses. I would love that. Football doesn't exist means that football as a sport doesn't exist, and that if you ever played football, whoever tells you they've played football, or if you think you've played football, you are just have memories implanted in your head, and that it's all just a simulation, and that football doesn't exist, and neither is real life, and we're all in a simulation, and the world's a simulation, and you need to take the red pill, you need to get out. Matrix, Matrix, Matrix. So that is the entire NFL iceberg made by this Reddit user. Let me look it up real quick before I get it wrong, because I know I want to credit them. So it was posted 3 months ago by Reddit user, let's see, Papa Pierogi. Says it's not theirs, but that's who posted it. And so thank them for giving us this mild entertainment for 30 minutes as I went through and discussed all these insane conspiracy theories and other deep cuts into the NFL. So if you like this, maybe I'll do another one for like college football or other sports or something else. But check out the rest of the channel. I have other cool like history videos of football and other our podcasts and hot takes and a bunch of stuff coming out, draft videos and things like that. So stay tuned for all of that. And this was really fun, and I hope you enjoyed it.